that's a triple play. New episodes, I couldn't wait. Yeah, open your mind at the first gate. Press play, no need to debate. AoA, check me out. Look, plugged in, you can catch the hype. Golden Dawn, how we follow the light. Anime like life, married to it, my wife.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages? Welcome back to the AoA show. I'm your host, as always, Ian, along with the boys, Isaiah.
Oh, hi, yo.
And Gavin.
What is Gucci shoes?
And today we're talking My Hero Academia, Season 5, Episode 2. This one's called Vestiges. This was a jam-packed episode full of information and certainly made up, in my personal opinion, for the first episode. Not that the first episode was bad, but there's no denying that it was a recap, a refresher, a introduction, as it were. They seem to be doing this at every single opener on every season for My Hero Academia, so this was really no different. So there was some split on that within the community, but I think personally this episode definitely made up for that in the sense that we really know where the show is going now. So there are a couple of talking points that we obviously want to hit on, and we're curious to hear your thoughts as well, so don't shy away from commenting your thoughts down below, so long as you're not spoiling anything. But so the first thing, I guess, going in chronological order here that we could talk about is Dabi, and the idea that Dabi is related to Endeavor, which by the end of this episode, I'm like 100% in that case. Right? Like, it has to be that.
Yeah, if he's not, like, it was, I feel like it solidified it for me when he, like, singled out Endeavor by name, like, not using his hero name, but using his real name. It's like, you know, just fair enough. You could be like, oh, well, he, like, heard it on the news or some shit. But, like, it becomes, you know, it's that thing when, like, one too many coincidences add up, and it's like, okay, this is no longer just, like, a, you know, oh, haha, isn't that, like, a funny matchup? Like, I feel like he's 100% his kid. I think he is the first and worst example of, like, what Endeavor used to be. So in, you know, much in a similar way to, like, the Nomu fight that Endeavor had, I like this idea that, like, again, and it's executed well with his current family still, that, like, Endeavor being the number one hero doesn't, like, fix his problems. He doesn't, just because he's, like, the number one hero doesn't mean that, like, everybody loves him. You know, all his past transgressions can just go, you know, get swept under the rug, and like, you know, everybody's, oh, you know, we don't care. It's like, no, he still hurt people, mostly being his family. And, you know, there are those in his family that are, of course, going to be more willing to forgive him, i.e. they said his mom, it would be his wife and his daughter, but his sons aren't feeling that way. And I don't really think they're, like, they don't have to be, you know what I mean? What Endeavor did was painful and it was real, and not everybody copes with that trauma the same way or at the same rate. You know what I mean? Some people, it takes a lot longer to get through that kind of stuff. So
yeah, for sure. I'm really excited. I've said this before, but I'm really excited for Endeavor's arc specifically going through this season. There's going to be a lot of cool things to hit on, just highlighted in this discussion alone. But Endeavor's arc to me is going to be something that I'm really looking forward to, because Endeavor has a lot of demons, and a lot of those demons are not the literal representation, but like Dabi, you know what I mean, is one of them, right? They don't have to be like big and scary and knocking at your door. It could just be the damage that you've done to your other children, etc. Like, and I like how Endeavor is understanding of the fact that he says, I have to atone for this. Even if it's too late, I have to do something towards it, which is a really huge leap in his character for sure. We saw that during the Nomu fight, where he kind of just fights his past in a sense, through embodied by the Nomu. So that was really cool to see, and I'm really excited to see where he goes from here. But he's like, you know, I'm not gonna, you know, try and harp on it too much. I'm not gonna ask for forgiveness. Like, this is going to be a slow process, and I'm willing to go through it. And I'm excited to see that turnaround from him. It's going to be really sweet, and how his family maybe comes around or maybe doesn't. But that's kind of the beauty, and maybe the wrong term to use, but in this sense that they don't have to come around to it at the end of the day. It's a matter of he has to atone for it, and he's going to have to face a lot of these demons down. But the other thing that was cool is that he's going to have to become his own symbol in certain, you know, in certain ways here. They kind of embody that last episode where he raises his right hand instead of his left, which was something, and it's cool to see what the symbol of Endeavor is going to be, right? Like Endeavor's time. We got the Itadori cameo as well, which was really cool for any Jujutsu Kaisen fans out there. If not, Natsu from Fairy Tail, kind of a similar one too. That kid's got his own merch line now. And everything.
He's a YouTuber.
Yeah, that was crazy. But I think the point is that it's going to be a slow process, and the fact that it was a young boy that said that, or it could have been a young girl, just a young person in general, really embodies what Endeavor is trying to work towards here. He says when All Might came to him and he said, you know, what is strength you and all that, he's like, the first thing that came to my mind is I have to secure their future, which is huge steps for him. Like, this is a total 180 from what his character was initially. Do you have any thoughts on the whole matter?
I mean, I got thoughts on Dabi. I want to go back to
yeah,
that.
go for it.
Because I'm just gonna say, if Dabi is not Endeavor's son, dog, like I'm done with this show. Like the amount of salt that they've been throwing in the wound, like after the movie, after like Gentle Criminal. I'm just saying, like, if you're trying to say that this is a red herring after everything, like he has blue flames. We haven't seen him for almost the entirety of the series until it's Endeavor's turn. Like, and just with everything else, just with the things that he said, if they're gonna come out and work it, they're like, oh, he's like the third cousin of ex-brother Z, who was like, I'm gonna be like, dude, just give me something, please, because you just take everything away that I like want in this world and just destroy it for literally no reason. And I'm just gonna say I will be so mad. But given that he is his son and he better be his son, what I'm most curious about is if he has one-on-one time with Endeavor, because obviously he's going through changes, and Dabi is the person that he is because of Endeavor. It's a great parallel between the family he has now and Dabi himself, and just what is going to happen as Endeavor changes and everybody else around him changes. And I wonder if they're going to harp on that with Dabi specifically as his character, because he is obviously going to see Endeavor, who is his father, go through these changes and not be the same person who he was, who put Dabi in this situation that he currently is in. Yeah. So I'm wondering how he actually internalizes the whole situation on what's going on with the League of Villains, everything that's happening, and see if he possibly changes, has a change of heart, or even redirects himself, because I'm not saying he's just going to be a 180 good guy, but like if he changes paths in terms of where he is going down now. And that is what is really going to make me curious as Dabi as a character, because a lot of people love him. And, you know, I feel like that goes beyond the image that he has,
Sure.
or I'd hope so. So I feel like there is genuine reasons why he's doing what he is doing, and I want to see, you know, how really far his layers go back in terms of, you know, thought process, reflecting, looking at everything that's happening situationally, and then like really using those ideas to push forward. So yeah, I'm definitely curious to see what Dabi does, and he better be a sun dog. I'm harping on it.
No, you make really good points. The parallel to see him and Endeavor, but they could be going in opposite ways too, right? Because Dabi is much younger, obviously, than Endeavor too. So this could just be the start of his descent or ascent. We're gonna see, you know, this parallel between them, and I think that's gonna be one of the biggest demons that Endeavor has to face down. It's like, this is my literal creation based off the fact that it would be his son. Now that's not 100% confirmed. To be fair, there was a guy that was shooting fire out of his finger on the news, so like this isn't just his genetic line.
He's got blue flames. You ain't telling me that's not gonna be the perfect
I'm just saying. I want to just reinforce, just in case it comes down. I don't want you to hit the ground too hard, just in case.
No, I'm hitting the ground and it's going to. I'm going to China.
You're crashing into the bitch if it's not true.
I don't want you to break all your bones in case this isn't the thing. So I'm just bracing myself.
It's not the thing, dog.
It's over. It's over if it's not. No, I do think it's his child. But one thing that I am curious about is if it's from the same mother. I actually don't know if it's from the same mother. I think it's a previous marriage or fling or something that Endeavor may have had, and it might have been with another fire user, right? I mean, I guess that doesn't technically have to be the case where it's like they're all, you know, the genetics are a funky thing, but that could have been it, where it's like maybe he was trying to make the perfect hero or whatever through like doubling down on whatever quirk that was, because a lot of the reason that he married or had children with his current wife was because of the fact that she had the ice ability. So he clearly came around to the idea that he's like, oh, I have to cool myself down. That's the best way to utilize this, i.e. Shoto. So that'll be interesting, though, to know if that was like through a previous marriage or something. If it was like he doubled down on the fire, but that was like even worse because not realizing the inherent weakness of it, Dabi's fire is like insane. But Dabi's a lot of scars that look like burn marks, you know, in some way, shape, or form. Probably so he could have, he might have like literally physically really messed himself up. Like Todoroki has the one, Dabi's like covered in it. So that could have been
what's interesting about if all this tracks is that, you know, Endeavor's quirk is incredibly powerful, but it has drawbacks. It literally heats his body up to unnaturally high temperatures, which is why he was like, oh, I need the ice to cool me down. But Dabi doesn't seem to have that problem. Like, sure, Dabi has the body scars and stuff from his you know, from whatever happened to him, but he seems to be able to utilize his quirk virtually without that drawback.
Or he has it, but he just hasn't cared, i.e. the scars. like he got pushed too far, because we haven't had too much backstory on Dabi and like everything. Like we just found out that Endeavor has the overheat mechanic in when he fought the Nomu. So like Dabi might have the same drawback. It just hasn't been explicitly stated yet.
But I feel like we've seen we haven't seen a lot of him, but I feel like we've seen too much of him still, to where like if he had that drawback, exact same one, like we would have seen it somewhere, or he would have like there would have been a point, because he's been in enough fights now where it's like he seems to be able to use that ability where it's like, okay, if you have some sort of drawback where like your body is taking damage, like I feel like that would have manifested in some way.
Scars.
Well, no, but I feel like if his body would take damage in some way, it wouldn't be the same as Endeavor, because I feel like that's just too basic in a way. I feel like they would almost make it like, because I mean, obviously his flames are physically different. They're blue. So I feel like that trait in itself is going to be different from Endeavor's orange ones, which causes him to overheat. And maybe in a fashion he overheats and his body deteriorates in a different way, but I feel like it like is going to work different from Endeavor's, and whether he is physically taking damage or not, it's going to be because of something else other than he, or it was caused or inflicted on him. I feel like they would take him a different route.
So I don't know if the show is going to put it in a different way. So fair enough. I'll concede that if that is the case, but the blue flames would be indicative that the flame is hotter. That's it. Like fire would just turns blue when it becomes that hot. So I'm assuming that's why I'm personally going with the theory of it's like doubled down on the heat thing. So he is just like the pinnacle of what fire could be. That's just my thought. I could be wrong. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I would just struggle to think of like a different drawback, but I mean, whatever. It's useless to harp on it. I'm just curious to see how that's going to play out, in the future. If he doesn't have a drawback, that's pretty insane, because he could theoretically, using that power correctly, be just stronger than Endeavor, right? At that point, if he has no significant drawback and his flames are just hotter, it would
just get a really tall glass of water.
A really tall glass of water. Dabi is a tall glass of water.
That is his
weakness. Yeah, I don't know. That'll be interesting. Was there anything else on Dabi specifically? I know. Okay. Yeah, just so I didn't go past it here. And, Endeavor's arc, it's going to be really cool. Hawks. Let's talk about Hawks for a second here. I'm very excited to see Hawks' whole thing. I almost wish that they had drawn out the flip side, the fact that he was a double agent to like future episodes, because I feel like it was like, oh my God, he's working with Dabi and the villains, like that's crazy. And then not the next scene or the one after that, they're like, oh, actually he's this double agent thing. To be honest, you could have dragged me along a little bit there personally, and I would have been like, oh my God, I would have been wondering if Hawks was like this bad guy all along, which would have been interesting if they had done certain like Hawks now knowing, right, that Hawks is a bad guy, some of his things that he does, his actions might have been interpreted differently, and then when like they reveal it a couple episodes later, it puts it all into perspective. Thought that would have been a cool variant to it, but fair enough. We realize that he is a double agent, but the kicker here is that he really doesn't have a choice. Hawk seems to be the guy that is almost too smart for his own good, has this kind of burden of responsibility in the sense that he is almost like the guy not in charge per se, but that knows more than even the number one or the king, but it kind of has to work from behind the scenes, almost like the king's advisor in that sense. So that's going to be really curious to see that, because that's a lot of weight on somebody's shoulders to know all of the things that are going down and have to make certain decisions conscious of the fact that they can hurt some people in order to service a greater good, right? It's like ignorance is bliss type thing. He's on the total opposite end of the spectrum there. So I'm curious to know if you guys had any thoughts on Hawks, or, excited to see anything particular going forward in this season.
I actually like that, because I get what you're saying, but I actually like that they didn't really harp on like the whole like, oh, whose side is he really on thing, because I like the idea that, at least from what I've gathered, that the show seems to be trying to reiterate this message that like the organization, the hero organization, is like, they're responsible for putting Hawks through this. They're the ones that are like, oh, you have to go do this. And he even has a line where he's like, it's weird that you guys are like framing this as if you're giving me a choice, because I have to do this like shit anyway. Because ever since My Hero started, one of the things that interested me specifically to once we got to situations like this was the hero organization, because I like this idea of the hero, the Superman archetype, being so noble and prestigious as it is, almost being like corrupted, right? And like milked in a way by means of turning it into an organization, making it a company, because then there's people involved and money, and like there's all this red tape and businessy stuff and like all this shit that doesn't belong anywhere near, the archetype of a hero who needs to just sort of be able to go out and save people and do what he wants to do. And you shouldn't have to answer to people. But like that's here. So it like sort of muddies up the waters and puts all these little gray spots in areas in situations and things that like should be a little bit more black and white, at least when it comes to being a hero. So I like this idea that, we're not so much dealing with like the show isn't trying to frame it as like, oh, where do Hawks' allegiances lie? It's like arguably Hawks is probably one of the most dedicated people to this cause, to being a hero. But it's this it's this organization, this group that wants things done their way. And it's like, so it, I like this idea of like, what does it mean to be a hero, right? Is it like following your gut, your intuition, your will to want to just like do what is right, or like following the regulations, following the rules, following all the red tape and all that stuff. So yeah, and I like it too, also being that Hawks is the number 2 hero. It's like you were saying before, where it's like your Endeavors, your All Mights, they're like the number 1 hero. They're the Superman. They're the guy who gets in front of the camera and saves the day and stuff. But like, again, arguably Hawks is the one who has to like, is probably has the most weight on his shoulders, right? I mean, he has to contend with all that stuff and being there to support him as the number 2, but then also all this, flip side, whatever else it is that the organization has him doing. I don't envy the position Hawks is in, because he has that moment where he sees Endeavor in the hospital and he's like, I'm sorry, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Because I have a feeling if Hawks genuinely had a choice, he might not have chosen to do this. But like, again, this is the obligation or the burden of a hero that he feels he has to bear, and he feels he's the only one that can do it. Endeavor is, and All Might, they are arguably probably a little too righteous, right? Like, I don't know if they would be able to take this mission, so to speak, quietly or sitting down. They might sort of object to it just off the premise of like, no, this isn't right. I could totally see Endeavor doing that. But Hawks is like, look, we don't have a lot of options. Like, if this is going to get us the intel or the leg up that we need, like, somebody has to do this.
That's an interesting perspective to look at it like that from the whole hero organization. Do you have thoughts on it, Gavin?
My thoughts is, if he has to answer to someone, and if so, what limit is he allowed to make to keep a promise? Because, like, let's not forget, like, almost a whole city was destroyed and the number 1 hero just to, like, see if, he was trustworthy. And I'm just like, I feel like there must be a limiter somewhere that would be like, yeah, we're not going to do this, or like, I don't know, because I get it, you need to build trust, you need to do these things, but it's like, there was a lot of risk behind that, and it's like, I just feel if something was to happen later down the line, is there a limitation that he can physically agree to something, because he is trying to get on the side of the bad guys, and they're going to want to do bad things.
Like how deep the undercover goes?
How deep the undercover goes, and how willing he is to make, in terms of promises and deals that will directly affect people around him, and vice versa. Is it, like, there obviously has to be a reason why he's doing it other than getting data? Like, is if he's allowing them to do this, like, giving him like, what area is he getting leverage from doing these things for these people other than just gaining their trust? Like, what information is he getting? How is he able to, filter that into, like, the Hero Association and things like that? So it's like, is the benefit, or is the benefits that you're getting from doing this outweigh the negatives, as in almost destroying a town and the number 1 hero that just got appointed literally the day of, like, and it's more because it's just going to get worse and worse, and I'm assuming it's going to go a little bit in the development of Nomu's and him getting more information on it, possibly where they're making it things like that. Like, this information is vital. I'm just wondering to what lengths he is allowed to go and is willing to go to get said information, because I mean, he kind of went ham on that last time, but it's interesting.
I think that's what they were sort of making a fuss about in the meeting in this episode, they were like, the fuck happened? Like, and then that's why Hawks even went to Dabi. He's like, yo, that's not what you said was going to happen. Like, a whole fucking city blew up. Like, you said you were letting this thing loose in a warehouse, and like maybe one warehouse building would explode. Like, Endeavor almost died. Like, you know what I mean? So I think we are actually already seeing the very like rocky relationship that this is going to cause between Hawks and like the League of Villains. Because again, he is obligated in a sense to do this to get intel. I'm assuming they want intel so that they can sort of take the League of Villains out from within, sort of inside out job. But again, like I said, it's going to be this question of like, is Hawk's duty and loyalty to his ideals as a hero, and more importantly, the ideals of people like Endeavor, is that going to like sort of like supersede and overturn this mission? Because, if I want to put it, I think the organization was not as beat up about that as Hawks was. Like, I think they were like, that sucks. you know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
see you
yeah.
Monday. You know, like, but I think Hawks was the one like coming in there like, yo, what the fuck is going on?
He's on the front line.
Yeah. So I
it's
think
different.
like Hawks, it's going to be, you know, if that's what this mission requires, I think the organization and obviously League of Villains won't give two shits. Like, what does it matter?
Yeah.
But like, you know, is Hawk's psyche, quite frankly, going to be able to take it? Is he going to be able to watch this stuff happen, assignment after assignment, before he's like, you know what, fuck it, like, I'm a hero. I can't, you know what I mean? I can't do this.
He's in a precarious position just in general, for obvious reasons, but also I think that the villains are not as naive as some people might think at face value, or at least the organization thinks at face value. And I think that Dabi already, we can kind of see it, that they don't really even trust each other. And I think that the villains on purpose are giving him information, but are kind of fudging it, as we saw here, right? Where the Nomu just flew right in the middle of the city instead of like the whole warehouse thing. But then they're also like, oh, and that's crazy. Not one person died, huh? You know what I mean? It's like, are you really devoted to this thing? Like, you really took your time to do that, et cetera. And like, he's going to have to really stretch the imagination here, or work triple as hard to make sure everyone's saved. And the villains are just going to be throwing hand grenades. You know what I mean? And then Hawks is going to have to make sure nobody gets caught with the shrapnel. So that's a really interesting position that Hawks finds himself in right now, because I don't think that those villains trust him completely at all, and they're going to keep on just making his job harder and harder for him to do that. But then he's also going to be getting it from the organization being like, why was this so much of a mess? Or make sure you're going in deeper. And it's like, dude, this is a tough
and God forbid,
position
like,
to have.
you know, Endeavor or the actual heroes start getting like privy to it, and they're like, yo, feels like these villains have like a little bit too much intel when they attack us. It's like, you know, there's only so many sides that Hawks can be hit from before he caves on one of them, and
it's super tough, especially too with Endeavor being that I believe they highlighted this briefly in season 4 at the end. I could be wrong here, but they definitely did in this episode, where we see how Hawks is a literal prodigy. Like, he saved a van full of people when he was like 5 or however old, right? And he's the doll of Endeavor, which I thought was very telling, because he didn't have the doll of All Might, right? Who you would assume everyone would have, because he's literally like a Greek god, right? He's something to aspire to. But Endeavor is the number 2 at that point, right? And Endeavor is still going through a lot of those battles. I mean, he still is, but, you know, really more in the thick of it. And I don't, you know, didn't have that huge change in perception, because we see that throughout the courses of these seasons. So it's interesting that Hawks gravitated to Endeavor as someone that he aspired to be, maybe not be like per se, but to kind of have as his hero, right? No pun intended there. So I think that's very interesting now that he's working with him, that he has to hide these things from Endeavor specifically, you know, rather than anyone else. That's going to be really hard for him to do, but he's got to keep up this facade and appearances where he's like, you know, he plays this like cool guy with Endeavor and kind of like jeers at him and jokes with him, or like, you know, kind of is a little ass when it comes to Endeavor's like, listen, you little shit, you know. But Hawks really deep down, you know, there's a part of him that idolizes Endeavor, or at least did.
Sure.
So that's a very interesting dynamic, and I love it between those two. I think it's going to be really cool to see. I just wanted to say real quick, that scene, one of my favorite shots in this episode was when Dabi yells at Endeavor his name, and he's like, "Duh!" Like, that was really emotionally packed. And then where Mirko comes down, Bunny Thick Thighs, according to Gavin, that's the new name on the AoA show here, comes and saves the day, quite literally makes that dramatic entrance. And I'm really curious to see this girl cut loose, like, for real.
I hope she does, dude.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm so kind of like over these people like having these like one instant saves, and then like the next time we see them, they get their ass handed to them.
Yeah.
And, like, we never see them again. It's like,
I hope
please
not.
don't.
I don't
fucking
think
be
so,
irrelevant.
though. I
It's
think she's
impossible,
good.
because let's not forget, she made this appearance today, which
Yeah.
is the day before Easter. She's Bunny Thick Thighs, and she can lay them eggs all around them houses, because, you know, they are going to be the I gotta go. All right, sorry.
You're wild.
I did forget all of those very logical points.
Yes, that is very true. It all comes together. No, I think she's going to have her moment for sure. I think she's ranked 5 out of all of them, so she's obviously super strong. I love that she's like this super, like, beat 'em up, like, right in your face style thing. Unfortunately, the Ink dude, whoever that was, seemed to be the perfect match for her, because for somebody who just punches their way through things, something that morphs around it, doesn't seem like the ideal matchup there. And I don't know if we're supposed to know who this Ink thing is. Did we get an Ink villain in the League of Villains? Does anyone remember? If anyone could clarify that in the comments, because I totally
don't think
forgot.
so. I mean, I don't remember.
Seems to be a new guy in the squad, though,
Yeah.
which is interesting that they had the Ink person there, because, like, what was the plan with the ink person, right? What did Hawk say that Mirko might be coming in, right? Because now we know he's parlaying information between the two sources.
Well,
or
I think,
was it strictly just to help him in the fight versus them?
I think it was all about. I don't even think Hawks knew that was going to happen because I think, again, sort of like you were saying, like I don't think the League of Villains are like, yeah, Hawks, come on in and join us. Number 2 hero. They're like, I don't trust this dude, for a beat. So like, let's give him this plan, but like, this is our thing. So I think this dude, whoever he was, is a new guy that the League of Villains recruited, but like he's an actual villain.
Yeah.
And Dabi was like, all right, if shit does go wrong in any way, like you have my back. You pull me out of there because his ability seems to be able to fucking teleport and just warp people out of where
warp
it.
gate.
Yeah. Just with ink that comes out of you. So I don't think it was like, oh, Hawks knew that he was coming in and sent Muriel. Like, I think
Probably
it was just
too
like
far into it.
Dabi had some cards, up his sleeve just in case.
Yeah. No, cool stuff, though. I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned Mirko in the episode because it was pretty relevant what she did, obviously, and I'm excited to see more of her. But moving on now, I think, to one of the craziest things in this episode, Deku's dream. Right, so let's talk about that.
The first time we saw this was the end of season 4, right?
Correct.
It was like literally the very last bit of the last episode.
Yeah.
He has the vision and he sees all the former, people, all the former heroes. That has his quirk, and then it ends. And so this episode doesn't really so much explain, doesn't explain how what's happening is happening, but it sort of explains in a manner like what it is, right? It is a vision, that he is seeing because he is connected through the same line that all the other past, one for all, heroes were before him. But my question was, as I was watching the whole time, because it would have been, I feel like it would have been one thing if it was like he saw like all the past prodigies and maybe he saw like snippets of All for One, his conversation with his brother, and like maybe he just saw like buildings, right, or like places and faces, but like didn't like he essentially got like a whole 1-act play. Like that was like kind of a lot of information for him to get in one sitting
for the audience too.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering like, okay, so does that mean that all the One for Alls prior like had the same vision? And like everybody knew about this because, again, to my understanding, the All for One hasn't, there is no lineage. Like it's just been him, from the jump. So
made a deal with the devil or something.
Yeah. So did they all know about this too? And like, I guess then it begs the question of like, how long has this game or this fight been going on without anybody acknowledging this? You know what I mean?
I think they have. I think they have known, and because it's been alluded to that it seems that All for One is the main, has been the main bad guy. And it seems that this quirk has been getting stronger every time that it's passed down and utilized differently and discovered. And I don't even know if All for One realized how strong of a quirk that he gave his brother was, because it seemed weak on the face of it. But the amazing thing about this quirk is not just that it's like, oh, you're weak, now you're strong. It's like, no, this just gets progressively stronger until it just is unstoppable, I guess. So I think, to answer the question, or at least my perception, is that they all knew it, and it seems that they've all been fighting All for One in some manifestation, whether they've encountered him or not throughout but they keep on falling short. And All Might was the first one to actually beat him, in a sense, although you could not count it as that because All Might seems to be just completely out of commission, whereas, what One for All is or All for One is like could break out, and it's like, so he won, but he didn't,
accessible
type thing, where it's like Deku maybe is going to be the one to like really finish him off, might be, or at least that's the hope.
Yeah, I guess that's my thing, is if all the other One for All, heroes prior have like had their stab at him, so to speak, and have had their time to fight him, and All Might, who is the literal closest to the current successor, is the only one that has managed to hurt him. Again, I can't even really say like beat or killed, because it did a lot more damage to All Might than in retrospect than it did to All for One. Like, I don't know. I would wonder then, like, and I think this might be a little bit of what in the next episode where Deku seems to like be meeting with All Might and like be like, "Yo, I had this weird dream last night." Like talking about what this vision means in the long term and like in perspective of like, is just fighting this dude enough? Like, is there some bigger, link here that like we're all supposed to be seeing? And like the past, prodigies or whatever you want to call them, like just didn't, either didn't get that or didn't know how to act on it. And like, so we've just been, everybody's just been taking their jab, taking their punch at him, but like clearly that's not working, right?
Yeah, I think there's more to it, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I apologize if you were going to say something, but I think that one of the points that All For One was trying to make is that Shigaraki is his name, right? He's going to be his successor in some way. And at first I thought that I was like, okay, he's really going to be the one in charge, and he's like saying Shigaraki is his successor, and then, you know, he's going to have all the quirks still, and he's going to be kind of pulling Shigaraki, and Shigaraki's going to have his like I touch you, you die thing. But the more I think about it, I'm wondering if actually, because All For One can transfer quirks to people and take them, it's not just taking them, it's giving. If he literally is grooming Shigaraki to take all of his quirks, and that he's just finally going to check out. Now, in the code of villainry, that doesn't seem like the first thing that would happen. I'm like, okay, like major villain guy, he's going to do anything he can for him to be the one to hold on to that power. So that very well might be the case. But I wonder now if there's something to be said about that. All For One is slowly not deteriorating, but is realizing that he's getting closer and closer to meeting his end every time that one of these successors comes around. And so much as he wants to hold on to the power, it's going to be an unrealistic feat. And so long as his vision survives and like what he thinks the right thing is, or the noble thing to just like rule through force, it doesn't matter if it's him as the body that's doing it. It matters for just that the vision is successful in that way. Not to mention too, we don't know if he dies physically in his body, like if he transfers all of his crap, if somehow his consciousness will still be there or something like that. Bottom line is I think that Shigaraki is more than just like, I'm going to groom you as like my favorite pet villain guy, and you're going to get really good at your quirk and learn all these things because I just like you and I want to flip the bird to all the one for alls. But I think it's a little bit deeper than that. Personally, I have so many questions on this scene, but I wanted to see what your thoughts were first, Gavin.
Yeah, no, for Shigaraki, I think so. It's weird because ever since he was introduced, he always just seemed like a spoiled brat, which nobody liked, and didn't seem like someone who could be groomed into a position like that. So I'm wondering if it stems more simplistic in a way where it's not Shigaraki himself, but it's his quirk, and if there's a reason why not All For One, one for all. I wonder if there's like a reason that he actually can't steal Shigaraki's quirk because it's decay. Like maybe there's a way that like he can't physically touch him or steal it because it will directly kill it. Or like I feel like there's something with the quirk that Shigaraki has that he is one for all. Why is my brain doing this?
All for one is selfish.
Yeah,
everyone's working for one person.
I know it's selfish. It's just when like I go to say it, but
no, but
I know what it does.
I have to do that every time in my head because I get it confused too, and I'm like All For One, and then I'm like, wait a minute, that's selfish. That wouldn't be the good guy. I'm like one for all is you're being.
It's like
selfless.
I know it, but like on the spot trying to like decipher it, it's just
Dude,
like
I do the same
it
thing.
muddles you. But I wonder if there's a physical reason that he can't get Shigaraki's like quirk. For whatever
maybe it doesn't have anything to do with his quirk. Maybe for some reason, like I don't know, his blood or some shit. Like he's just immune to having his quirk stolen. So maybe that's why. Wow, see, now I did it. One for all All For One. Maybe that's why he is gravitated towards him. He's like, well, this is fucking weird. Like, this has never happened before.
Yeah, I feel like it's some reason other than Shigaraki's personality because he's just there's nothing appealing to him, I feel like.
Although he did.
Really? I feel like the ultimate villainry thing, though, is the fact that he is the nephew or grandson or something of the predecessor, All Might's predecessor, the woman. He's using that. That's what I was saying. He's like flipping the bird to the good guys to be like, I could have, because his whole thing here, he pulls like an Orochimaru, right? They kind of like him on this in the early parts of Naruto, and it seems to be this guy's MO where it's like, and villainry code, where you take someone that's at a really low point, right? And that it's very impressionable and can be manipulated in some way, shape, or form because their life just sucks. And so he takes advantage of that. Right. And obviously Shigaraki fell into that mold. And I think he could have technically not taken anyone because I think there has to be some sort of innate ability and charisma or whatever, or potential for growth and latent ability that he probably would like to see in someone if he is going to pass it on or at least have him in charge while he's behind the scenes. But I do think that Shigaraki, with the added benefit of him being the grandson or nephew or whatever the hell of his old rival, is definitely like a big FU to all of them. And he's like, not only only am I going to do this, but he's like supposed to be the.
I get that. I'm just saying you could have found someone better. Like it's just from what we've seen. Like I don't know. It's just from way back when we saw. We're like, why are you a thing? Like obviously it's just somebody pushing you along, and it's like you can't tell me that there isn't a more qualified villain, which maybe has a better. Well, I understand the whole. It needs to be impressionable. You need to do this.
No,
that,
not that.
like,
I think that Shigaraki's actually had a lot of
sauce.
growth. Personally, I think that Shigaraki as a villain has actually had substantial growth from where he was, because he was this petty squabbler in the beginning. He was a real brat, and it was like, dude, like go to bed. You know, drink your glass of milk, turn on the nightlight, like you're going to bed. But he, throughout the course of this. And it's tough to see because he's a villain, and he doesn't get, and sometimes doesn't get as much screen time. But I do think in his aspect of villainry, like character growth doesn't necessarily have to be positive per se or serve a positive good overall, but just in his development personally, I do think that he has become a better villain in the sense that he's been able to.
The other thing is that like Shigaraki is a pretty traumatized person, right? Whatever, we haven't like his backstory. We know that it fucked him up, and clearly All For One took advantage of that because he was like, oh, here's this kid who's been through some shit. He happens to be related to so. Like, you know what I mean? And so then I think it was sort of, it's not, I don't think it's any one of these things in particular, whether it's his personality, his trauma, his ability. I think it was the culmination, his heritage of all these things just sort of added up to the perfect person to potentially pass this on 100%. To. Because again, like you were saying, if All For One dies and whatever, and then like his quirk just disappears, it's like, wow, well, that was a waste. But if he can groom somebody to carry the same ideals he had, i.e. somebody who was traumatized, and then instead of being helped and worked through that, just sort of like fed all of his, nonsense into, Shigaraki becomes a new All For One, essentially.
Yeah. No, it's definitely a conglomerate, I think. And I think it's important that Shigaraki seemed to be the least qualified in a sense in the beginning and now is growing into it. It's reminiscent. You ever watch the Star Wars Old Republic trailers that are basically like movies out there? If you haven't, fantastic. Definitely go watch them. But one of my favorite ones is it's the trailers labeled Sacrifice. And spoiler alert, the whole point is that there's two twins, and that the twins are only one of them could be the predecessor or the right-hand man to the father, which they don't know. But the father is going through this whole speech that it's like, when shit comes to find you, when the darkness comes, when you have to make your own path and you can't rely on anyone else to do it. And the one twin who's super talented keeps on looking flawless in all of his shit, where the other one just constantly gets his ass whooped and he's angry and he's got like a half a metal face because of war. And you're thinking it's like, well, the talented twin is clearly going to take the cake on this one. But then, what happens at the end is that the one that has been through the trials and the fire and has like lost bad and been traumatized winds up snapping, trying to kill the father. Twin saves him, but then he winds up killing his brother who's been there for him the whole time. And that's finally when his father accepts him as the one. So my point in all of this, which is crazy, but my point in all this is to say that Shigaraki, maybe because of the fact, another thing to add on to here, because of the fact that he's been someone that seems like the least likely candidate to do it, is all the much more likely once he comes of age, in a sense, because he's been through the bottom and had to literally fight tooth and nail to get his way and has experienced insane amounts of trauma. So like when he is fully grown into that maturity, like, it's solidified. It's not just something that was passed on because of happenstance and, and because he just got lucky and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I think we could debate on this and theorize on it all day. It's a super interesting thing, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts in the comments on that one. I have so many questions. I want to know, number one, why All Might wasn't in that vision, because it seemed to be all of them right there. That's my first question. And my second, is it because he's still alive? Is because he's not technically like a fragment of his past? Is that he's still once they die, once All Might dies, that actually will be a growth moment for Deku, because now he's able to, I don't know, communicate or have whatever power that was, and now it fully transfers or something.
I do think it's like Avatar rules. I think if they're alive, there's not their generation isn't
All Might,
done.
how much longer you got?
Yeah. Well, but I think because that's the other thing too, is that Deku, like I said, next episode, he had this vision and clearly is like, well, got to ask All Might about this because this is fucking weird and nobody else knows. But it's like the growth moment for Deku, I think, will be once he's, old enough, experienced enough with the power, and maybe even in a situation where he can't rely on All Might because now All Might's officially gone. And Deku will have to sort of, internalize and understand and come up with these things either on his own, or maybe he can, like I said, in lieu of Avatar, just straight up communicate with the past successors, via link or whatever. But I do think it's interesting. This idea that like right now Deku is being groomed as a successor, but he's still kind of in the safe place, right? Where it's like if some weird shit happens, he can just run to All Might and be like, "Yo, what's going on?" You know. But like, imagine All Might won't be here all the time, you know. And so I do think it's interesting that like All Might, you know, All Might's job isn't done yet, but like once it is, Deku will officially be like successor on his own. You know
I
what
think
mean?
that it's going to be absolutely imperative for All Might to die for Deku to finish and realize his full potential and growth for sure. I think like that's a big narrative purpose. You know, that it's like the father has to die for the son to be able to come of age to like work on his own, to really be his own person, you know, because like that's been the thing where he's trying to delineate himself from All Might in the sense that he's like, I have a different style, I have this, I have that. But until All Might is like literally, like you said, out of the picture, I feel like Deku like at that point is forced to be his own person and to carry that on whether he's ready for it or not. And I think that's going to be a big maturation moment for him. My other question here, even more so curious, was why there were two people within the lineup that were not formed within their bodies, which was interesting because Deku seems to be at 20% at this point, and it seems to be his nose up or wherever, and like his couple, half his hand. Whereas all the other ones are fully formed, which to me would indicate that they're at 100%, given what the OG guy says at the end. He's like, oh, you must be at like 20%, right? Yeah. Not manifested. So my thing, I wonder, is, okay, are those people prior people in the lineup that never fully realized the power and somehow passed it on to someone, hence why they aren't formed? Is A. B, are they like so old that the flame actually does die out like as it goes? And the point is that like, you don't get the full, like once you get to a certain point, like once you get to the new person, whoever the last person was is kind of like starts to fade. You know what I mean? And like, it doesn't just go continuous. It goes like this. Does that make sense? I'm wondering if that's B, or C. My theory is that those are actually future predecessors of Deku, and that, you know, because they aren't even manifested yet, because like Deku has this weird intrinsic link with all of them. They all have this weird link with each other, but they can't actually like form who that person's going to be. And these are people in the future that are going to take up the flame in that spot. But those are my three stabs at it there. I don't know if you guys had thoughts on that, because that was really interesting to me.
Well, I mean, the last one is fucking crazy because that implies that there's like a time travel element to this, and that like, you know, sure, Deku will choose who's the successor, but like that it's arguably all like in some way, shape, or form already decided. You know what I mean? Like fate has been like, nah, this is who's gonna do it. Like, you know, whatever way you want road you want to take to get to there, do it. But like that's where you're gonna end up. Which after Attack on Titan, I think we can take a rest on the time travel shit. Personally, but I think the other route of that, like maybe the flame dies out, is interesting, but then I wonder like how that translates to the power itself. You know what I mean? Like if the flame physically like dies out in the users as the power is passed, does that mean like, you know, after a certain point in time, like the current successor is only able to commune with X number of successors because the ones who are way far back like are just not, they're actually just gone now. Or like my thing was that those could be like the original progenitors of the quirk. That those could be like the people who first like manifested or came up with this quirk. But then that like, you know, that troubles with the whole all for one thing. So I don't know. It is definitely interesting that they weren't. And also, unless I'm remembering this wrong, the yellow one kind of looked like All Might.
With like long hair that it looked like. So I didn't
So
know.
I don't know. You know, just drawing lines where I see them. But like, I wonder if maybe it's not so much that like these things are like people who are gonna be future successors, as in like past Deku, but that they're the people that those representations of All for One and All Might. That they're people who are connected to this quirk, but are still not, you know, haven't passed on and still aren't in, because the other one was like all purple. And we didn't really get to see what its shape was like, you know, initially. And so if the yellow one was All Might, I'm like, what if that's like it's kind of more like that's their spots, you know what I mean? Like once they pass,
once
like
they bite it,
like that's, you know, because this power is like a web, like it connects all of these people to each other. So I feel like it literally is like the flame is gonna die out in you, All Might, and when it does, this is where you're going to be.
That's interesting. What did you have thoughts on that, Gavin? Or
No, my thoughts were they were living people, like All Might or someone else, just because like they're like Deku, he's in that shadow form too, in that same realm. So like, why couldn't other people who were still alive? Not to mention, like All Might still has some sort of that power. So like, for me, it just like logistically made sense that like it's two people that are alive. One of them All Might, and the other one is blanked out because they just want to lead on who it's going to be, like who has that power, who like we don't know about, but it's inferred that they do. So like for me, that just kind of seemed like what it was. But yeah, I'm curious to what that other blue or whatever color purple person is, because I just assumed the yellow one was All Might. But yeah, I do think that they're living people, current living people that have some sort of that power in them that are alive. So
yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Can you imagine? It was like All Might actually never used 1% of the ability. He was it's just like, no, he never manifested even like his nose. Like it's like, what? That's what he looked like, and he was at 0. No, that'd be crazy.
Wow.
And it goes far, man. There are like what, 9 generations or something like that, and when they used to call them meta powers or something like that, and I was like, oh man, they got the different lingo in there. That's how you know it's old, right? When you like read old English or some crap. Yeah, it's like we call them quirks now, dude. Like that's kind of our thing. So
we'll call Quirk's dad, okay?
Yeah, it's not meta powers. It sounds weird. He's like, well, back him up.
Cringe.
So that was interesting though, and to know what that seemed to be the real beginnings of when quirks and meta powers are both manifested themselves in the world, right? So it seemed to be this new. It seemed to be the perfect breeding ground for cult followers, in the sense that All For One was able to get people, because as we've noticed, some people really get the shit end of the stick when it comes to quirks, where it's like some guys' fangs won't just stop growing at all. Like they'll just keep on going forever. And it's like, that's really annoying. And people think he's a freak. So it's like, yeah, that sucks, right? So there are a lot of situations like that, especially if this is a new manifestation, where people are like, like why is this a thing? Like somebody help me, you know? And then other people are like, oh my God, I'm a literal god, right? And it's like, coming to grips with that when it first hit the scene was like a perfect scenario for him. And he must have just been, I don't know what his deal is. I'm actually curious to know, All For One's, if he was just blessed ridiculously in some way, shape, or form. It's like, yeah. My thing is that I think his quirk, his initial quirk, was that I can steal people's quirks. Like that's it. He didn't have any other ones, and he just eventually accrued like 1 billion of them, because he's like, once he figured that out and then he could use them, he just gets more powerful as he goes. So he definitely was like probably down in the dumps at some point, and then it happens, and then now he's like a god, you know, and he's like, okay, well, there's going to be order, but it's going to be under my will, you know, basic villain trope there. So, but I do find that interesting to, you know, to get highlighted there within that flashback, that whole play of things that we saw. So really interesting stuff going forward. This episode,
it's also interesting because with like, again, with those two guys, where it's like, oh, we took the one guy's fangs away and gave the other guy tree branches or whatever that was. I wonder how much of All For One, you know, helping these people, and obviously like they're in desperate situations and dire circumstances, so it's they're sort of like, we'll take what we can get. But if it's almost like a monkey's paw situation, where it's like, yeah, I'll give you a power, but it's by no means going to be like some Todoroki shit where it's like, oh, I can shoot fire and ice, but like I'm, you know, other than that I'm chilling, or like Deku where I can hit shit really hard, but it's like, no, I'm gonna make tree branches shoot out of your body. Like nobody will fuck with you, but like nobody will fuck with you. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, I wonder if, you know, and again, with the guy who he took the fangs away from, it's like, okay, what if though he ends up in a situation where like that might, like, you know what I mean? I wonder if it's more of like a monkey's paw thing, where it's like, yeah, I'm helping these people, but it's like I'm helping them under the pretense that I'm literally giving them what they ask for. But a lot of times what these people ask for is not like what they want. Yeah,
because the other thing too is that I don't know if this was confirmed or denied, but if he gives someone a quirk, I don't know if he has that quirk anymore, right? He literally like might have given it like, here's your ticket, right?
That was my thought with the fang one, because it looked like he took his fangs away from the guy and gave that other guy fangs. I don't think they were tree branches, because the guy with the fangs said you couldn't control. They growed randomly all over the place. Like it wasn't just limited to his mouth.
Fangs,
yeah, I'm pretty sure those were just literal fangs growing.
The second
out of his
guy,
body.
the bald one?
The second guy, yeah, I literally think he took the fangs from the one guy, because that's why he said the guy with the fangs originally, they were only in his mouth, but they said they grow uncontrollably, like seemingly all over.
Sure,
like it's not just like, you know, blocked off to his mouth. took it away, Fang's gone, gave it to the other guy, and then you had these pointy Fang-looking things popping up all over the place. It's an uncontrollable thing.
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying? That
I
was my thought of it, and it
Okay.
would explain why he would possibly lose said Quirk if he was to give it to someone, because not necessarily a monkey paw thing, but he could just take quirks that nobody likes or that they want to get rid of because they're useless, and people who were like, I want a Quirk, I want to feel useful. Well, he's just going to give them the abundance of useless shit that he's accumulating from people who don't want said Quirk, you know? So it's like,
but I guess
keep
he
the strong ones, but give the shittier ones to other people.
In a way, he is altering them, right? Because with the first guy, that was only in his mouth. So it does, if All for One is able to take away quirks, it's not like a literal 1-for-1 where he's like, all right, you know, don't have fangs in your mouth, you have fangs in your mouth. He's like able to take the quirk, alter it then, and then give it to
If
someone
that is the
else.
thing.
I don't,
If that
hold on.
is-
So
yeah,
I want to say,
yeah.
I don't even think it's altering, because don't forget, people are born with and without quirks, and there's all different stipulations. I think the body just actually processes quirks differently compared to other people. So yes, he's taking fangs, which affected this person in a certain scenario, but
genetics,
when he gives it to someone else, they weren't born with the quirk. It can affect their body completely differently. So, you know, he's taking it, giving it to someone else. He's not altering it, being like, I'm going to be shitty, blah, 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 give him like a genie thing. Like, it's literally, he's just taking it out, giving it another one, like a 1-for-1, and then literally that body, which
but
never
I
had
guess
that
if
quirk,
that
is
was
just, like,
if that
mute,
was
like,
the ongoing
mutated.
theory, then I guess he would be exempt from that, like with his own DNA.
Yes.
Like he would get exactly how he wanted it.
Exactly.
But the only thing is, then if he gave it to. The only reason I don't know if that's the thing is because if he took it from someone, gave it to someone else, the quirk manifests itself differently, then he takes it back. It's like, does he get to, is that the thing, right? Does he get to just like morph the way the quirk works? And then in that way, it's like, is it even the
Well,
same
don't
quirk?
forget, we see it with his brother, which he gave One for All, where he's giving people quirks, and they might seem different at surface levels. But then again, if the body takes it differently, and every individual person takes said quirk differently, he could give a seemingly horrible quirk to someone, and just based off the genetics of that person, that quirk can take over and manifest in such a powerful
Could be.
way.
I think that one in particular is a special case, because I think the thing with that is that the quirk inherently is that it gets stronger the more it's passed. So that's obviously something he couldn't realize, because that was the first generation. So to him, it looks like some shit quirk. So I don't know necessarily if it was his brother's DNA that morphed the quirk. You could be right, though. I don't know. I think there's a lot of questions definitely around that, because we don't have nearly enough answers on it. But regardless, I guess that he gives them, and once he gives them, like, he doesn't have them is the point. That's what I'm curious about too. So I don't know. There were a lot of crazy things, a lot of great talking points this episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Was there anything else that y'all wanted to bring up before we ended it off here? No?
We're good.
No.
Good?
Bunny thick thighs, I better be seeing you tomorrow.
Bunny thick thighs.
He said
Anyway,
tomorrow.
so I'm curious to know, for anyone who made it till the end of this video here, I have a question for you, and it's not necessarily like a who did this thing, who did that thing, what colors, whatever. I'm curious to know, because this was a talking point we had here, and you were talking. I thought it was a good point you brought up with the organization and how Hawks, is limited, I guess, in a sense, from being a hero, because those things are separate intrinsically in some way, shape, or form, etc. But it got me thinking, and I'm like, if this was like a real thing, because this has been something that's incorporated, especially in a lot more modern shows that have their take on it, right? Whether for better or for worse, like The Boys, or if anyone's seen Invincible, it's a new show that's aired on Amazon. Regardless, it's superpowers. People have it, but a lot of it's like government regulated, right? So I'm curious to know, for anyone out there, right, just a hypothetical out there, if superpowers were real, right, in the sense that quirks are real or something along those lines, do you think that they should be regulated, I guess, is the first question? And if so, how? Would that have to do with something with government? Would that be down to some separate hero organization? Would that be in the parameters of your community? Would you not have them regulated at all? I'm curious to know your thoughts on that, because I think it's a very interesting question. It got my brain jogging, the gears turning on that one. So that's my question. Answer that any way that you'd like. We might just shout it out on our next discussion video. Gavin, do you have a comment of the day? Can you pull up real quick?
All right. So today's comment of the day comes from Paul Rios, and it says, Deku's power is called One for All. Bakugo's is Explosion. Blah, blah, blah. Just a question for you guys. Are y'all going, or are y'all going to do a review for the Demon Slayer movie? It comes to the U.S. It comes to the U.S. theaters in April, I believe. I assume you guys are hyped for it. Ha, ha, ha. oh yeah, we are going to see it. And let's just say that train arc. Has anybody been sleeping on it? Because I'm just going to say I haven't been sleeping on it, because if you've been sleeping on it.
And I've been waiting for a long time to say this, but as a manga reader, I do personally believe that this is... Yeah, please. Give me my monocle, too. I personally believe that this arc and this part of the story is peak Demon Slayer, in my personal opinion. I would say that could be, that could be debatable with some people, but in my personal opinion, I think this is when the story, along with the action and all that kind of stuff and all, was at its absolute peak, in my personal opinion. So I think if they do this movie right, which I'm assuming they did, y'all are really going to enjoy it, the anime.
And like the fact that it's, in anime form now is, I mean, we know from season 1 of Demon Slayer, like, that's only going to enhance everything that this arc does, because it is. I wouldn't personally go. It's not my favorite arc of the whole series, but it is a really good arc, and I am more than excited to finally see it in like anime form now. Yeah, we will definitely be talking about it.
Super excited for that. It's going to be sweet. Thank you for the comment, Paul. We appreciate you, and for watching until the end of the video. So make sure you guys are watching until the end of the video so you caught my question, that you could comment it. Also, big shout out to our patrons, our acolytes of anime. We have Stoic, we have Nathan. We actually have a new one on there. I believe it's Midduit, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Minduit.
Yeah. Please correct me if I'm wrong on the pronunciation on that, but thank you very much for bumping your pledge up to the Acolyte of Anime tier. We really appreciate you, and all the new patrons that have come on so far. I'm not going to lie. It's because Haikyuu's there now, but yeah, 100% because Haikyuu's there, which means that I don't want the show to ever end. No, but if you guys are interested in supporting the show while getting exclusive benefits to it, you'll definitely want to go check out our Patreon. The link is in the description down below. And also check out the AoA Reacts channel, link down there as well, so you can catch our live reaction to My Hero Academia, among many other shows that we are covering at the time. But until next time, folks, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you on the flip. Peace.
Pasta.
Ninjas and samurais, blazing the kunais. Find me in the leaf of the cloud, screaming out Bankai. We just some ghouls though, who like seeing parts fly. They like what you saying. Goma got more through the storylines. I tested your neck from the start. My hunters gon' come for your heart. I promise you'll land in my boulevard. Left them in one piece, no.